Loved Dire Straits as a kid. Brother in Arms was probably my favorite album back in 1984 or 5-ish when I was a kid listening to it on a cassette. I literally had a cassette player in my. I had a Mustang 2. It was my very first car, a black Mustang 2, and I put a new Alpine stereo system in it. I installed it myself. I was so proud of it. And Dire Straits was one of my first cassettes, and I used to listen to it all the time. I still do, obviously. I still do. That's not the point of this conversation. The point of this conversation is Warmly. If you don't know what Warmly is, and what all the work that Max and team have been doing, the CEO, you need to check it out. It's an approved app in the Zoom app marketplace. By the way, I'm Patrick Kelley, distinguished architect at Zoom. I am not a figurehead or a spokesman for Zoom. I just like to talk about cool technology, and a lot of times that deals with Zoom. And today, again, dealing with Zoom, but more importantly, Warmly and all the great work that they've done. I've been using this app for, probably coming up on at least a year now, I think, Max, right? More than that. I don't even remember. I love this app. I use it literally every day, as well as a lot of our SEs and salespeople and everybody internal has the ability to use this app because it's so immersive. It's so easy to deploy. It's so easy to use, and it's a way to literally pre-collaborate before you even begin speaking. Like on this one, I use my regular background, but you can use Warmly backgrounds as well. But I also have stuff in the foreground. This is actually, I think, is cooler. Is the foreground stuff where I could literally share information with you as a user, participant, agenda person. Doesn't really matter. I can pre-share information with you without you even having to ask. Like a lot of times you're like jump in the meeting, you're like, oh, Patrick, hey, where are you from again? You're like, you don't have to know. I don't have to tell you. It's literally right here on my screen. Hey, what's the weather like over there? Again, on my screen. Hey, what's the local time there? Again, on my screen. So a lot of these things that you ask in a meeting before you're introducing yourself, or maybe even before you even start the meeting, you can really share up front. Obviously, my name and title are there. There's a little picture of myself. But also just some, a little quip about who I am, what I'm involved in, maybe hobbies and stuff like that, all really built into the platform, so I can share this. I just shook the whole table. I can share this with all my attendees and participants and coworkers and colleagues. Hey, Patrick, what's your LinkedIn page? What is your Twitter page? A way to literally socially interact without ever even having to share this information. I love Warmly for that reason and that reason alone. I love it even more now. And here's the reason why. And Max, forgive me for not doing a video about this earlier. I didn't know it existed. I typically don't go into the video widgets, gadgets page on your app and play around. So I'm sorry I didn't do that earlier, but I did it yesterday, and I came up with this little nugget: the agenda. Like, this could be the coolest thing you've done over there in a while. I'm in love with this for multiple reasons. We've been in many meetings where we have no idea what the agenda is. So what if I just share it immediately when I start the meeting? We've been in many meetings where they might have shared what the agenda was at the first couple of slides, but I don't have a photographic memory. You do. Maybe you do. Then fantastic if you do. You don't need this. But I do. Because after the first slide, they start talking about some other stuff. We're 5 minutes in. All of a sudden, I'm like, what was the agenda again? Who's going next? Sometimes when I'm a speaker, I like to say, like, hey, am I going at 10:20? I forget. Like, I don't know who's next. So I can kind of prepare myself for when my opportunity comes to talk. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I literally could look at the agenda. It's on the screen of the presenter, maybe even the host of the meeting, all the time. And then they can dynamically update it too. I obviously put these on there before the meeting starts, but watch this. I'm going to drag this screen over real quick. Look what's happening here. I can literally rearrange these. We're talking about Warmly right now. Look at that. I can check it off. Watch what happens. Dynamically on the screen, it updates the agenda. I want to say I wanted to talk about Zoom and team chat, and then the customer's like, I'd rather talk about Zoom IQ first. You're like, okay, well, that's what happens. I'm going to swap them. Look what happens over there. Zoom IQ and team chat got swapped. like this is super cool. I can add items on the fly. Let's talk about call center, right? So the customer's like, hey, I just heard Zoom had call center. You're like, that's right, they do. They're like, can we put that at the top of the agenda? And you're like, absolutely. We can do that. Talk about it right now. So we've talked about call center. And he's like, hey, I heard you have some ZooIQ, some sales analytics inside Zoom phone and Zoom meetings. You're like, yes, we do. Let's talk about it. Oh my gosh, I didn't know you had Zoom team chat and integrated with a SharePoint, leveraging SharePoint and Microsoft ecosystems. You're like, yes, we do. And they're like, that's such a fantastic meeting. Let's have a beer. Yes. Well, I'm not going to check that one off. It's 10:46 in the morning. I'm not quite ready to have a beer. No judgment. If you are, that's fine, depending on where you're at. Actually, my stepdad was an ICU nurse, and he used to work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. And then him and his coworkers would get off at 6 a.m. and to them, that's their evening. It's the after work. They would go to happy hour at 6 a.m. There was a a bar across the street from the hospital that was catered toward doctors and nurses, and the 6 a.m. shift was over. So it's just like having a beer after work. That's what they do. So you never know, right? So if you are a nurse or an ICU and you just got off work at 10:47, it's your evening, have a beer. I'll join you maybe later this evening. So Max, thanks again. Your team has done a fantastic job. I love Agenda. I will be utilizing it today in my meetings. I can't say enough good things about it. So thank you.